Something special about it.
Sawyer, S.K.
There was a feeling that this was going to be not just another run-of-the-mill war movie.
Jefferson, R.T.
It was like an opportunity for a great breakthrough for a black actor at the time.
Jimenez, P.
Robert Aldrich, the director, he was kind of a tough guy.
Posey, S.
He wanted it to be as authentic as he could make it.
Pinkley, V.L.
He wanted to make a war film that was ugly, that was brutal and vicious, and nobody was good.
Dirty Dozen shows you that wars ain't nice things.
It was a fine, fine film, even though people did say that it was horrific and everything else.
Up through, let's say, the mid-1940s, up to the end of the war films were essentially about the squad, about a group, about Americans working together to win the war.
If you think of any traditional mainstream movie made right after World War II, that was all about, if you will, properly memorializing the sacrifice that so many people made to win that war.
Then you started getting more reflective films about the war and what was going on in the war. You had something that people were a little hesitant about at first, like The Desert Fox, where all of a sudden we were supposed to see the German enemy as a hero in some way. And so the shifting grounds of the war film into the 50s changes the attitudes towards the war.
By the time you get to Dirty Dozen, it's really about something else. It's about people who really just want to survive the war.
Look, you little bastard, either you march, or I'll beat your brains out.
With the demise of the code office, you had the ability to use four-letter words which gave more realism to the films than you had had up to that point. By the time you get to the Dirty Dozen, they can get away with a lot more.
My first novel was The Dirty Dozen, and I had about 500 some odd pages finished and had long since run out of money. So I had the West Coast editor of Dell and Random House take it and get me a motion picture option.
Aldrich had tried to buy The Dirty Dozen before it was published, but MGM had purchased the rights.
And then finally he was brought onto the project by Kenneth Hyman.
MGM said, "We own a book. Would you like to produce it?" I read the script. I said, "It's interesting. I like it. But if you want me to do it, I want to start from scratch. I'd like Nunnally Johnson to do the screenplay." To make a long story short, Nunnally Johnson was signed to do the script. I then went after a director. And I knew Aldrich because we had done Baby Jane. I was executive producer on that. He had an ornery quality that I liked a lot. He was his own man. He was terrific with actors.
Aldrich, of all of the great directors I knew how to deal with an individual on that individual's basis.
He was the kind of a fella, all man, very quiet, soft-spoken. People jumped when he, said, jump.
He was a tough guy. He'd been around. After all, this is a guy who managed to control Bette Davis and Joan Crawford in a movie. Baby Jane.
I think Aldrich obviously had, if not a reputation, at least could demonstrate from his previous films that bringing together a group of actors and staging ensemble scenes was something that he was comfortable doing.
I think he must cast a director like you cast an actor, and I thought he would be superb casting for the movie. Happily, he liked what he saw and said, "Let's go."
Deal was a good one from Aldrich's point of view, not only in terms of the money, but also in terms of the creative prerogatives it gave him. He had cast approval. He went in saying that he needed to rewrite the script.
He wanted to bring his writer, Lucas Heller, in to do a polish.
Aldrich read the script, and while it was well-crafted, it was, he thought, a 1945 war movie, and that's not what he wanted to make. So what he asked from Heller was to essentially make it reflect a lot of the concerns of 1967.
And in reworking it, they turned it into this sort of anti-authoritarian, anti-war movie.
Up, up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
In casting a project like this, I think Aldrich understood that he had to cast from a diverse group of actors that would indeed reflect the diversity of wartime.
I think the fact that the part of Major Reisman was originally offered to John Wayne is intriguing, and also it's intriguing that John Wayne turned it down.
Afterwards, Aldrich was accused of not wanting Wayne because of his politics, and Aldrich pretty straightforwardly said that's not what mattered to me. It was Wayne's on-screen persona.
He knew John Wayne would, first of all, change the whole tenor of what became Lee Marvin character.
I think we were very lucky to get Lee. At the end of the day, Lee was better than Wayne would have been.
Look, they might not be pretty, but any one of mine is worth 10 of yours.
Lee Marvin brought a commitment to the character and brought something to that character which John Wayne wouldn't have brought the same thing to it.
Lee Marvin was all Marine. I mean, he was a Marine. That was it, period.
Lee was a great person, very bright, and very strong, as he would have to be to lead that group of men.
You've got a job to do, mister, so move it.
When The Dirty Dozen came about, Robert Aldrich had certain actors that he was very fond of and they would use again and again. Ernie Borgnine was one of them.
I was making McHale's Navy at the time, and I had to get back from McHale's Navy, but this fit into the thing just perfect, so that I could go to England, make the film, and come back and still be in time to start shooting McHale.
This war was not started for your private gratification, and you can be damn sure that this army isn't being run for your personal convenience either.
Ernest Borgnine is interesting because Ernest Borgnine has always been sort of an alter ego for Aldrich. He looks a lot like Aldrich. And so he in many ways, he sometimes plays his alter ego, and you see it a little bit in The Dirty Dozen. When he's running the meetings, that's the way Aldrich sort of ran meetings, you know, with a drink and sort of this, yeah, I'm following the rules, but I'm not really following the rules.
John, good to see you. Don't you give me that. We had dinner last night together, remember? Be nice.
I was involved with The Dirty Dozen because I had worked for Robert Aldrich. He was a friend, and he gave me a shot at things when I was first starting out that were very meaningful for me. Originally, I wanted to do the part that Telly Savalas did, the crazy nut, and Aldrich said, George, believe me, you could play the Savalas part, but Savalas couldn't do what I need you to do. So it was a very nice compliment. I would have worked for him anyway.
Aldrich liked to use people on two ends of it. He liked to use people who were older, who had established names, like Robert Ryan and Richard Jacob. But he also liked to get people who were sort of maybe down on their luck, or people who were just giving them a little bit of a start. And so you have the case of like John Cassavetes, who started the independent film movement. But he'd always been sort of put aside. He hadn't worked much because he was temperamental, because he had that whole sort of independent attitude.
So what are you gonna do? You're gonna hang us? What can they do? They can't do nothing.
Cassavetes didn't want to do the movie. He wanted to direct the movie. I had almost a fist fight with him to cry. He'd say, Johnny, for God's sakes, this is a wonderful role. Do the movie. Put the money in your pocket, then make your movie. And he almost didn't do it.
Who is refusing to share? We are. Who is we? We!
I remember Lee saying to me once that Cassavetes was a huge help to him because of John's spontaneity and the way he'd chop and change things and bringing stuff to Lee that Lee could, could work off of, and really kind of brought the conflict of the dozen in a single voice to him.
I don't like officers. Not any of them, and I never have.
Charlie Bronson was a very unique guy.
I remember that when we started filming, everybody was afraid of Charles Bronson. Everybody was very intimidated by him.
Charlie Bronson had instructions to get his hair cut. And just before we started shooting, he still hadn't got it done. Everybody else was buzzed out of their head. Bob Aldrich is on the telephone at the end of the table. He said, Charlie, I have your lawyer on the line in California. He wants to know whether you're going to get your hair cut or he should come over and cut it.
You gonna tell us or not? What the hell?
I don't think he wanted to be in England. I don't think he was particularly happy with life at that time, and he was pretty well morose through the whole movie.
Heads up! Yes, you, Major Reisman. I saw those filthy scrubbers.
Telly Savalas, I don't know anybody that could have done the part as well as he did.
Do we have to eat with niggers?
Telly was interesting because he brought another edge to the story that it really needed, and in a way, I think on set Telly was almost like that a bit.
At one level, Dirty Dozen is really male testosterone-driven